in the UK we've been enduring the worst summer we've had for 100 years. The terrible weather has put a real crimp in the work that we've been able to complete this season. But finally summer's arrived. It's beautiful, it's warm, it's already 95 degrees here in the polytunnel and it's early in the morning, so we're going to have to move this work outside today. The tree we've brought to work on is a beautiful old olive. This is Olea oleaster, which is the wild form of olive with the beautiful small leaves and fine twigging. We've had this tree now for about a year. When it first came to the nursery it had 1 metre, maybe 2 metres of growth on it. And it's certainly been in this pot for more than 4 or 5 years. Last summer we cut the tree back very hard, and that's given us this lovely fine dense branch structure that we can use in its first styling. Because the tree was allowed to grow, the base of the branches has thickened up reasonably well, so that's going to give us some nice mature branch structure just straight away after the first wiring. There's a small cut in the top, as is usually the way with this type of material, but the character of this tree is absolutely superb. We've got beautiful bark, really nice and craggy. We've got natural hollows, natural deadwood, and a really nice twist in it. So we're going to be able to make something very special from this tree, and because it's so well established and because of the time of year that it is, we know that the tree is going to respond very well. So today we're going to be doing a very small amount of carving on this tree, and we're going to basically wire and set out the branch structure. When you begin work on material like this, it's not really important to know exactly what you want to make at the outset. What you have to do is find basically you go through the tree, find the parts that are the most beautiful, and you want to accentuate those. So we'll start by removing a few branches. That'll open up the structure. We'll be able to see this beautiful trunk, and then from there it'll be a matter of arranging the branches that we've got left, dealing with a few stumps and little bits of carving and very small details. But this is such good material, this is such an easy tree to do. Realistically it's probably only going to take us 2 or 3 hours to get this work completed. I'm now settled on the front of this tree, which is going to be this side. We've got a couple of big knuckles here that had branches coming out, which I've now pruned away. We've got a nice thick branch over here, a really big one, and that's got some superb structure on the top of it, which we're obviously going to use for the apex. Not too sure about these ones here yet, but what we now need to do is have a go at this and deal with this. There's a lot of dead bark in here which naturally died back, but these big knuckles are really spoiling the taper. But I want to be careful to not remove too much of this, because what I'll end up doing is shortening the trunk and I'll lose the movement that's in here. So I've got to be quite careful with how much of this I remove. The other thing is I found a couple of nice little natural hollows in the trunk which are hiding under some of this dead bark, so I think that's going to really help to add some character. So now the job is to start to pull some of this wood out. Power tools are really good for this type of work. This wood is very hard. If we were going to do this with a chisel and a mallet, by the time we'd finished all the roots would be broken and this tree would be loose in the pot, and it would cause a lot of stress to the material. The tool I'm going to be using today is this terrier. This is a little cutter that I designed myself. It's absolutely perfect for tearing out this type of work and this size of material, and it makes very light work of this very hard wood. Power tools are one of those things which are quite contentious in bonsai, but if used correctly then obviously they can produce really good results really quickly, and with the minimum amount of stress on the tree. But with power tools it's important to decide what you're going to do before you start. You don't want to just grab a tool and dive in, because it doesn't matter how good the cutting tool is, if the idiot standing behind it doesn't know what he's doing, you're going to end up with a really ugly piece of work. So I'm just going to start now by pulling some of the middle of this out and chasing some of this dead bark back. can see the difference in the colour of the wood. We've got a very pale wood here, a dark line, and then a darker wood behind it. That shows you the difference between what's live, being the paler wood, and what's dead, which is the darker wood. But because this wood here is not feeding any branches, obviously we can cut down into this fairly extensively without causing any problem with the rest of the tree. Finished roughing this part of the tree out, and as you can see, this hole is nice and deep. We've actually broken through the back, which is nice because that allows the light to come in from above, so that'll create a nice little bit of sort of light and shadow in there. When you're dealing with something like this and you hollow it out, it's really important to get that hollow right down into the tree, otherwise it kind of looks like a piece of wood that's just stuck on the tree. Naturally, something like this would in time hollow its way all the way down through the trunk as water gets trapped in there, so making a nice deep hollow like this actually makes this look very natural. So now I've finished roughing this out and hollowing it, now I can begin to go down to some smaller tools and begin to add some detail and texture and really start to blend this in with the rest of the tree. The next tool I'm going to be using on this tree is a weasel. It's ground back to a very fine point, and it's great for making grooves and layers. The last tool I'm going to be using on this tree is this pinnacle, which is a very small, very fine pointed detail cutter, and I'm using it on a small power tool on a flexible shaft. That allows me to get in and do some very nice details. See here, the very small tool has left this quite fuzzy, but that's okay, because when we come to finish this, what we're going to do is burn it and then just brush it by hand. That'll take all the fuzz away, but the tool is actually leaving the detail underneath this. This deadwood, it's time to move this outside. It's 110 degrees in here and I've really had enough.